Welcome to TB Dahl Audiobooks. Before the story begins, please take a quick second to subscribe and leave a comment below. Your support keeps these stories alive. Now, enjoy the listen. This is an audiobook, Chapter 3, Part 1. Undisclosed Background. Author, T.B. Dahl. Chapter 3, The Second Envelope. Riley's apartment on Tofter's Gate smelled like coffee grounds and the lavender candle she'd left burning on the kitchen counter that morning. 8 hours ago. Before the envelope, before the basement, before the dead man's open eyes staring at fluorescent light. She locked the front door, turned the deadbolt, fastened the chain. The apartment was dark except for the hallway light she always left on, a small, warm glow from a vintage wall sconce Tara had found at a flea market in Kampen 2 years ago. Riley stood in the entryway and listened. The building was quiet. A pipe ticked somewhere behind the wall. The refrigerator hummed in its familiar key. She moved through the rooms without turning on the overhead lights. Kitchen first. The lavender candle had burned itself down to a waxy pool around the wick. She checked the window latch above the sink. Locked. Living room. The street-facing windows showed Tofter's Gate below, wet and empty, the row of parked cars glistening under sodium lights. She checked both latches. Locked. Bedroom. The window faced the interior courtyard, 4 floors up, nothing visible except the dark windows of the opposite building and a fire escape she'd never thought twice about. She checked the latch. Locked. Pulled the curtain shut. Back in the living room, she stood in the middle of the floor and tried to feel what the apartment was supposed to feel like. Bookshelves, art prints she'd chosen with care, a Munch lithograph, a small Anna Eva Bergman landscape, a framed poster from a Yale International Relations lecture she'd attended in her final year. Plants on the windowsill, the worn leather chair she read in on Sundays, her notebooks stacked on the desk beside her laptop. All of it familiar. All of it exactly where she had left it. None of it felt the same. The police had taken their statements, asked methodical questions, and released them with instructions to remain available. The process had been professional, thorough, and entirely inadequate for what was actually happening. Detective Inspector Karin Nordahl had been sharp, mid-40s, direct eyes, no wasted words. She had not seemed satisfied with the scope of what Riley and Elliot had offered, but she hadn't pushed past the boundary of a first interview with cooperative witnesses at 1 in the morning. Riley had given the detective the envelope, the letter, and a careful account of the evening that omitted nothing except the word Brasovo and the handwritten note she'd memorized before the police arrived. 17/Northern Table/B-4/Brasovo. She had not lied, she had selected. She dropped her coat on the hallway hook and went to the kitchen, filled a glass with water from the tap and drank it standing up. Her hands were steady, her pulse was normal. The analytical part of her brain, the part that had carried her through Yale seminars, client briefings, and late-night geopolitical scenario modeling, was already sorting information into categories. Known facts, unknown variables, immediate threats, next steps. But underneath the sorting, something else moved. A frequency she couldn't quite name. Not fear, exactly. Recognition. The sense that the apartment's walls had become thinner since she'd left. Someone knew her cafe. Someone knew her name. Someone knew where she sat on a Tuesday afternoon. Someone had prepared an envelope with a mark, R-17, that treated her as a catalogued item in a system she hadn't known existed. And now the police had her statement, her address, and her phone number, which meant the police file also contained that information, which meant anyone with access to the police file would have it too. She set the glass down and pressed her palms flat on the kitchen counter. The stone was cool, grounding. She counted the things she could verify. Henrik Rask. That was the dead man's name. The police had confirmed it during the interview. A retired archivist, museum consultant, contracted to the National Museum's collection services. He had legitimate access to the building. He had a key card that still worked in certain service doors. He was also the man who walked into Tim Vendelbo 8 hours ago and handed me an envelope without speaking. She was certain of this. The grey hair, the height, the deliberate way he'd moved through the cafe. The police had shown her a photograph during questioning, a formal ID portrait, the kind taken for institutional records. She had confirmed she'd never met him. That was true. But she had not mentioned that he matched the description of the man who delivered the letter, because the letter itself was already in evidence, and the detective had not yet made the connection explicit. Another selection. Another omission that felt less clean than it had at the police station. Her phone buzzed on the counter. Tara. Riley picked it up and watched the screen pulse. She let it ring twice more, then answered. "I'm home." "Thank God." Tara's voice carried the particular texture of someone who had been awake for hours without wanting to be. "Riley, what happened? You texted me at 10 saying you'd update me, then nothing for 3 hours, then a message saying you were at a police station. A police station." "I know. I'm sorry." "Don't apologize, just tell me." Riley leaned against the counter. She could hear the faint sound of Tara's apartment in the background, music turned low, the creak of a chair. "The letter led to something serious," Riley said. "I went to the museum. There was a situation inside. Someone was hurt. The police came." "Someone was hurt?" "Someone was dead, Tara." Silence. 3 full seconds of it. "In the museum? In the basement?" "Yes." "And you were there? You were there when—" "I found him. Yes." Tara's breath came through the phone like a small gust. "Riley, who was it?" "A man named Henrik Rask, retired archivist. The police identified him." "Did you know him?" "No." "Was he the person who sent the letter?" Riley paused. The question landed closer than she'd expected. Tara's instincts had always been faster than people gave her credit for. "I don't know," Riley said. "The police are investigating." "That's not an answer." "It's the answer I have right now." Another silence. Riley could almost see Tara's expression, the way her brow drew together when she was deciding whether to push or to hold. "Were you alone?" Tara asked. "No. There was someone else who received a similar letter. We arrived at the same time." "Who?" "A man named Elliot Harper, construction engineer. I'd never met him before tonight." "And the police have all of this?" "They have our statements, the letter, the envelope, everything I could give them." The word "could" sat between them. Tara heard it. "Riley." "Yes." "You're holding something back." "Tara." "I'm not angry. I'm scared. You went to a dark basement alone because a stranger's letter told you to, and you found a dead body, and now you're home at 2 in the morning giving me the version of events you'd give a journalist." Riley closed her eyes. The counter edge pressed into her lower back. Tara knew her too well for this. "There are things I don't understand yet," Riley said carefully. "And until I understand them, I don't want to say something wrong. Not to you. Not to anyone." "Is that the political risk consultant talking, or is that my friend?" "Both." Tara was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice had shifted, softer, but no less firm. "Are you safe?" "I'm in my apartment, doors locked. The police have my contact information." "That's not what I asked." Riley opened her eyes and looked at the dark window above the sink. Her reflection was faint against the glass. Behind it, the courtyard wall of the building opposite showed nothing. "I don't know," she said. "Then don't stay alone tonight. Come here, or I'll come to you." "Tara, it's after 2. "I'm aware of the time. I've been aware of the time since your text." "I'll be fine." "You found a dead man in a basement 3 hours ago." "And the police are handling it?" "Right." Tara's voice carried the faint edge of frustration that Riley had learned to recognize over years of friendship. The frustration of someone who loved a person too good at sounding capable. "Call me in the morning. First thing. Not when you've had time to think about what version to tell me. First thing." "I will." "Promise." "I promise." "And Riley?" "Yes." If that door knocks tonight, you don't open it. Riley exhaled. Good night, Tara. Lock the chain. It's locked. Good night. The call ended. Riley set the phone down and stood alone in the kitchen. The refrigerator hummed. The pipe ticked. The lavender candle's remnant gave off the faintest trace of scent from the cooling wax. She turned off the hallway light and went to bed without undressing. Across the river, Elliot's apartment in Saguenay was dark. He had not turned on the overhead lights when he came in. He'd used the flashlight on his phone to check the hallway, then moved through the apartment using the ambient glow from the street below. Muscle memory and spatial awareness did the rest. He knew this space the way he knew a construction site after the third week. Every wall, every threshold, every angle where the floor plan created a blind spot. Front door, deadbolt engaged. He pressed his palm flat against the wood and held it there for 2 seconds, feeling for vibration. Nothing. The landing outside was quiet. Kitchen, window locked. The view showed the narrow street below, a row of older apartment buildings, a closed barber shop, 2 parked cars, a bicycle chained to a railing. No movement. Living room, 2 windows facing the street, both locked. He stood to the side of each frame and scanned the visible segment of road. Nothing unusual. A light burned in a 3rd-floor window of the building opposite. The rest was dark. Bedroom. 1 window facing the rear courtyard. Locked. The courtyard showed a bicycle storage area, a dumpster enclosure, and the back wall of the adjacent building. No lights. Bathroom. Frosted glass window, too small for entry. Locked, anyway. He completed the circuit and returned to the living room. Sat on the edge of the sofa without removing his jacket. His boots left faint, damp prints on the wood floor. The unknown message still glowed on his phone. Safe? Sent at 0:47, 12 minutes before Riley had emerged from the police station. The sender's number was Norwegian, a mobile prefix he didn't recognize, not in his contacts. The message knew his initial. It knew his timing. It knew to ask rather than to tell. He had not replied. He didn't intend to. Not yet. He pulled a notebook from the shelf beside the sofa, a hard-bound A5 he used for project notes at work. Flipped past pages of concrete pour schedules and subcontractor contact lists until he reached a blank page. Found a pen in his jacket pocket. He began writing. HR. Initials on both letters. Person? Organization? Both? R-17. Hidden mark inside Riley's envelope flap. E-17. Hidden mark inside my envelope flap. File 17. Referenced in the note found near the body. File 17 is open. The National Museum. Meeting location. Basement service entrance. Access code 5678#. Henrik Rask. Dead man. Retired archivist. Museum consultant. Had legitimate access. Brasovo. Handwritten reference found near body. 17/northern table/B-4/Brasovo. Brasovo equals estate of Grand Duke Michael Alexandrovich. Riley's identification. He paused, looked at the list, wrote 2 more lines. Riley Hunt, geopolitical advisor. Received identical letter, same time, same location, different courier delivery point. Unknown text message. Safe? Sent 047 from unrecognized Norwegian mobile number. He set the pen down and looked at the wall. A framed topographic map of Jotunheimen hung above the bookshelf, contour lines tracing ridges he'd hiked 3 summers ago. Beside it, a photograph of his army unit, 8 men in winter fatigues, standing on packed snow, breath visible in the cold. He had been trained to operate with incomplete information. The army taught you that waiting for a complete picture meant waiting too long. You assessed what you had, identified the most dangerous unknown, and acted to reduce your exposure. The most dangerous unknown was not what File 17 contained. The most dangerous unknown was who knew that he and Riley had been to the police station. The courier who delivered his letter at the Bjorvika construction site had bypassed security, known his location, and timed the approach to catch him alone. That required surveillance, days of it minimum. The access code for the museum basement door had worked. That required someone with institutional knowledge of the building's security system. Someone who either had legitimate access or had obtained it from someone who did. Henrik Rask fit that profile. The note near the body said, "They know about the meeting," which meant the meeting had been compromised before it happened. Which meant Rask knew, or feared that his attempt to contact them had been intercepted. And yet Rask had gone to the museum anyway. Elliot picked up the pen again. Rask went to the meeting knowing it might be compromised. Why? Because whatever he needed to tell us was more important than his own safety. Or because he didn't believe they would kill him before he could speak. He was wrong. He closed the notebook, set it on the coffee table. The pen beside it, parallel, cap aligned with the spine. A habit that came from years of keeping tools organized on site, everything in its position, ready for the next use. He leaned back and listened to the apartment. Pipes, the distant hum of a ventilation system in the building's basement. A car passing on the street below, tires on wet asphalt, the sound rising and falling in the space of 2 seconds. He pulled out his phone and looked at the unknown message again. Safe? He typed a response but did not send it. His thumb hovered over the screen. Then he deleted the draft, locked the phone and set it face down on the table. The knock came at 2:47 a.m. Riley was not asleep. She had been lying on top of the bedspread in her dark clothes, eyes open, watching the ceiling. Her mind had been moving through the details again, the arrangement of the body, the precise fold of the note, the way Rask's hand had rested near the small brass key on the concrete floor, when the sound reached her. 3 knocks, even spacing. Not loud, not tentative. The kind of knock that expected no answer. She was on her feet before the 3rd knock ended. Stood still in the dark bedroom, listened. Silence. No footsteps, no voices, no second attempt. She moved to the front door, pressed her eye to the peephole. The landing was empty. The overhead light in the stairwell cast its usual pale wash across the worn tile floor. No one stood at her door. No one stood at the neighbor's door. The stairwell beyond the landing railing showed nothing. She waited 30 seconds, 40, a minute. Nothing moved. She unfastened the chain, turned the deadbolt, opened the door 6 inches. The cream envelope lay on the floor directly in front of the threshold, centered, placed, not dropped. The same weight, the same color, the same absence of markings. Riley looked left down the corridor, right toward the stairwell. The building was silent. She picked up the envelope, stepped back inside and closed the door. Deadbolt, chain. Her hands did not shake, but something in her chest had shifted, a tightening, a compression, as if the space between her ribs had narrowed by a fraction. She carried the envelope to the kitchen, turned on the small light above the stove, the only light she was willing to use. Opened the flap. 1 sheet of paper. Same weight, same cream color, same careful fold. 2 typed lines. They're watching you. No signature, no date, no code. She read it again, then a 3rd time. The words did not change. They're watching you. She set the paper down on the counter, looked at the kitchen window. The glass was dark, reflecting the stove light back at her, and beyond it, the courtyard wall of the opposite building showed nothing. But now the glass felt different, thinner, less like a barrier and more like a membrane. She folded the paper back into the envelope and placed it in the drawer beside the sink, beneath a stack of takeaway menus she never used. Then she turned off the stove light and stood in the dark. They know where I live. They waited until after the police. They came to my door. She pulled out her phone, almost called Tara, stopped. Tara had told her not to open the door. Riley had opened the door. If she called Tara now, Tara would come, and then Tara would be inside whatever this was. She put the phone away. She went back to the bedroom and lay down again. This time she faced the door instead of the ceiling. 7 kilometers northwest, the knock at Elliot's door came at 3:04 a.m. He was sitting at the kitchen table with the notebook open in front of him, a half-full glass of water beside it, when the sound cut through the apartment. 2 knocks. Firm. Spaced. He was already standing by the time the second one landed. He did not move toward the door. He moved to the kitchen drawer, opened it, and took out a heavy utility knife with a folding blade. Not a weapon. A tool. But a tool with a 4-inch steel edge that he'd used to cut cable ties, strip wire insulation, and score concrete formwork. He unfolded the blade and held it along his forearm, edge inward, the way he'd been taught to carry a field knife during night exercises, invisible from the front, available without extension. He crossed to the front door, listened. No sound from the landing. Peephole. Empty. The same flat overhead light he saw every morning when he left for work. The same industrial carpet. The same fire extinguisher mounted on the wall beside the stairwell entrance. He waited. Counted to 60. Counted to 60 again. Nothing. He undid the lock. Opened the door in one fast motion, stepping to the side of the frame as it swung inward, keeping his weight on his back foot. Empty corridor. No one on the stairs. No sound from the floors above or below. The cream envelope sat on the doormat. He looked at it for 3 seconds without touching it, scanned the corridor again, checked the stairwell through the railing, listened to the silence of a building where every other resident was asleep or absent. Then he picked up the envelope, stepped back inside, and locked the door. He set the knife on the kitchen table, opened the envelope with his thumb, sliding it under the flap in a single motion. 1 sheet, same paper, same fold. 3 typed words. File 17 is open. He read the message and placed it beside the notebook. The words sat there in the stove light, the same stove light Riley had used, though neither of them knew this, and he looked at them the way he looked at a structural drawing that contained a critical error. File 17 is open. The note near Henrik Rask's body had said the same thing. Trust no one. They know about the meeting. File 17 is open. This wasn't new information. It was confirmation. Someone wanted him to know that the danger from the museum was still active, still present, still close enough to leave paper at his door in the middle of the night. He picked up the pen and opened the notebook to the page he'd been working on. Below his earlier list, he wrote, "Second envelope, delivered to apartment door, 304, no one visible. Message, file 17 is open. Delivery method identical to first envelope. Hand placed, no sender, no postmark, cream paper. Conclusion, surveillance is ongoing. They know my home address. They knew I was at the police station. They waited until I returned." Riley received a second envelope too. He wrote this last line without knowing it was true. But he knew it was true. The symmetry of the first delivery, both letters, same time, same code, different locations, meant the second delivery would follow the same pattern. Riley and Elliot were being handled as a pair, separately tracked, jointly managed. He closed the notebook, picked up his phone, looked at the time, 3:11 a.m., and thought about calling Riley Hunt. He didn't have her number. They hadn't exchanged contact information. In the disorientation of the police station and the walk to Sagen, that practical step had fallen through. He knew her name, her profession, and that she lived in Grünerløkka. She knew his name, his profession, and this address. They had no secure way to reach each other. He wrote one more line in the notebook. Get Riley's number. Morning. Then he folded the knife, returned it to the drawer, and carried the glass of water to the bedroom. He set it on the nightstand beside the photograph of his parents, his adoptive parents, though he had never needed that qualifier before tonight, and lay down on the bed fully clothed. He stared at the ceiling. Whoever is running this can reach us whenever they want. The police station didn't stop them. The statements didn't stop them. They waited for us to come home, and then they knocked. The building settled around him. Pipes, wind against the window, the breathing of an old structure adjusting to the cold. He slept in intervals of 20 minutes, waking each time to listen, finding nothing, and closing his eyes again. Morning came grey and reluctant, the way Oslo mornings came in October. Not a sunrise, but a slow dissolution of darkness into flat, pewter light. The cloud cover sat low over the city like a ceiling that refused to lift. Riley woke at 6:14. She had slept, but she couldn't say when or for how long. The bedroom was cold. She'd left the curtain drawn and the room felt sealed, airless, separate from the waking city outside. She sat up. Her clothes were wrinkled. Her hair was pressed flat on one side. She reached for her phone and saw 3 notifications. A message from Tara sent at 6:02. Awake, waiting for your call. A calendar reminder for a 9 o'clock briefing at Ericsson and Lindgren. A news alert from VG. She opened the news alert first. The headline was brief. Suspicious death at National Museum. Police investigate. She read the article standing up, phone held in both hands. Oslo police have confirmed they are investigating a suspicious death at the National Museum. The deceased has been identified as Henrik Rask, 68, a retired archivist and museum consultant who worked with historical collections and private archival material. Rask was found dead in a staff area of the building late Tuesday evening. Police say the circumstances of the death are under investigation, and they are seeking information from anyone who may have been in the area around the museum between 2000 and 2300. A spokesperson for the National Museum said the building would remain open to the public, with restricted access to some service areas. No further details were released. Riley read the article again, then once more. No mention of envelopes, no mention of letters signed HR, no mention of a second person or a third, no mention of a code used to access the basement, or notes found near the body, or the word Brazovo, or File 17. No mention of Riley Hunt or Elliot Harper. That should have felt like relief. Instead, it felt like a held breath, the pause before something larger displaced the silence. Henrik Rask, 68, retired archivist and museum consultant. She set the phone down, went to the bathroom, washed her face with cold water, and looked at her reflection in the mirror. The eyes that looked back were alert, the skin slightly drawn from a night of shallow sleep, the jaw set in a way she associated with the hours before difficult client presentations. The face of someone who was working. Henrik Rask delivered my envelope. Henrik Rask had access to the museum basement. Henrik Rask was an archivist who worked with historical collections and private material. She thought of the handwritten note, 17/Northern Table/B-4/Brazovo, an archivist's shorthand, a cataloguing reference, categories and subcategories arranged in the notation style of someone who had spent decades organizing documents, provenance records, and collection inventories. Rask hadn't just known about File 17, he'd used its classification system instinctively, even while dying or in fear for his life. She toweled her face dry, changed her clothes, dark trousers, a grey sweater, flat boots, brushed her hair and tied it back, made coffee, strong, black, the grinder's noise filling the kitchen for 8 seconds and then leaving a silence that felt louder than before. She sat at the kitchen table with the coffee and opened her phone, found the VG article again, saved it, then searched for Henrik Rask. The results were thin. A mention in a 2016 National Museum annual report acknowledging consulting contributions. A brief reference in a 2019 academic paper on private archival donations to Norwegian public collections. A listing in an old professional directory for cultural heritage consultants. No photograph, no personal website, no social media presence. A man who had spent his career adjacent to institutions without leaving much public trace. Riley closed the browser. The article said retired archivist and museum consultant who worked with historical collections and private archival material. That was the kind of phrasing that covered a wide territory. Historical collections could mean anything from municipal records to estate papers to aristocratic archives. Private archival material could mean family documents entrusted to museums, or it could mean classified donor histories, sealed bequest files, provenance records too sensitive for public catalogue, the kind of records that might contain something called File 17. She picked up her coffee and held it without drinking. Steam rose and dissolved against her face. Rask was connected to the museum, connected to archives, connected to whatever system produced the R17 and E17 markings. He sent the letters, he set the meeting, and someone killed him before he could explain why. The police know he's dead. They don't know what he was carrying. She thought about the objects near the body, the brass key, the small silver cross wrapped in cloth, the folded note that said, "Trust no one." All of it now in police custody, tagged and catalogued, moving through an evidentiary process designed for domestic crime, not for whatever this was. She drank the coffee, called Tara. "Morning." "Morning." Tara's voice was immediate, no delay. She'd been holding her phone. "Talk to me." The dead man's name was Henrik Rask, retired archivist. It's in VG this morning. "I saw it. Riley, an archivist, in the museum basement." He had consulting access to the building. That's how he was there after hours. And the letter, the one that told you to go there? I gave it to the police. But you think Rask sent it? Riley paused. I think so, yes. Then he called you to that place and got himself killed before you arrived. Why would someone do that? I don't know yet. That's not good enough. I know it's not. Silence. Riley heard Tara pour something, tea probably, the kettles click. What aren't you telling me? Tara asked. Things I haven't figured out yet, things I need to understand before I say them out loud. Is that your professional judgment or your fear? Both. Tara exhaled. Fine, but you're coming for dinner tonight. You're going to sit at my table and eat something that isn't takeaway from a bag, and you're going to let me look at you while you talk, because your voice right now sounds like it did during your thesis defense, and that was the most frightened I've ever seen you. That's not 7 o'clock. Bring wine or don't. Just come. Tara? 7. I mean it. Riley almost smiled. The expression didn't quite complete itself, but it moved through her face like a reflex that still remembered how. 7, she said. Elliot read the same article at 6:23, standing at his kitchen window with his phone in one hand and a glass of water in the other. Suspicious death at National Museum. Police investigate. He read it twice, the way he read structural engineering reports, first for the overview, then for what was missing. Henrik Rask, 68, retired archivist and museum consultant. The article explained the museum access. An archivist with consulting credentials wouldn't need to break in. He would have a key card, a professional history with the institution, and a plausible reason to be in the building after hours. The basement meeting room became logical. Not an improvised hiding place, but a location Rask knew and trusted. That trust had been misplaced. Elliot set the phone on the counter and opened his notebook to the page from last night. He added a new line beneath the previous entries. Henrik Rask, confirmed identity, retired archivist, museum consultant, VG article published 6:15, no mention of letters, HR, file 17, Brasovo, or either of us. He underlined the last 3 words, or either of us. The police were holding their names back, standard procedure in an active investigation with cooperative witnesses. Names were not released to the press unless charges were filed or public safety demanded it. For now, Riley Hunt and Elliot Harper were anonymous entries in a case file. But the envelopes on their doorsteps at 3 in the morning proved that someone outside the police already knew everything the police knew, and more. He looked at the article again. Retired archivist and museum consultant who worked with historical collections and private archival material. Rask's career description read like a cover designed to explain decades of proximity to sensitive documents. An archivist who worked with private material would have access to family papers, sealed collections, donated estates, classified donor files. The kind of access that could sustain a parallel life of record-keeping. For an organization that signed its letters HR. Rask hadn't been a random intermediary, he was embedded. He'd worked inside the archival world for years, maybe decades, with one hand in the public system and another in whatever File 17 represented. And someone had killed him in the place he trusted most. Elliot closed the notebook, set it beside the second envelope, which lay on the table with its single sheet of paper visible. File 17 is open. He thought about Riley Hunt. Somewhere in Grunalocker, 6 kilometers south, she was reading the same article, making the same connections, feeling the same pressure from a direction neither of them could fully see. The story continues in the next chapter, so make sure to subscribe, leave a comment with your thoughts, and share this video with fellow book lovers.